How's the royal family? I pray that everyone is doing well. Now, y'all know my royal family. I wasn't going to go out like that. No way. No how. I wasn't feeling well, so I had to take care of my immediate situation. But I was on top of things. I ain't going to fail the royal family. I hope not. So, as we continue on, so I'm a day late, but it's okay because we are on verdict watch. It ain't much happening, but just wondering and hoping and praying that in this particular case that the jurors can come to a guilty of murder, no less, even though manslaughter is included. And we'll get to all of that, my royal family. So I want y'all to keep in mind that the jury are not privy to the information that we are privy to. So sometimes we can get clouded in our judgment, me too as well, that they are limited in what they see and hear. And so we are hearing a lot of things that they don't get to hear at all. And trust and believe they're going to go watch this and they're going to be like, whoa, however the verdict may go. So they are cocooned. They don't get to find out what's going on, the media's opinion, or just our opinion, period. So, as we continue on my royal family, let's get into this. Deliberations in Amber Guyger's murder trial will resume Thursday. Okay. I'm not going to get into all of that stuff right there. Basically, that's just talking about the time and breaks and all of that. So, but it'll be there to read at your own leisure. Tell her you will be held responsible. Prosecutor Jason Fine began closing arguments by holding up a piece of paper with Guyger's apology from Friday's testimony. He then crumpled it up and called it garbage and threw it in the trash can. I truly agree with him. And let me continue on. Fine said Gene was blindsided by Guyger coming into his apartment, acted like a normal, reasonable person when he looked over and tried to figure out why someone was inside his unit. Before he could even get up, he was shot dead in his own home, he said. Fine urged the jurors to not get caught up in being viewed as anti-police. A guilty verdict in this case does not mean you hate police, he said. This has nothing to do with politics. This has to do with the defendant making unreasonable decisions that put her in that seat and Bo in the ground. Fine then picked apart Guyger's testimony, saying she gave two different versions of events of how Jean reacted. She couldn't even get her story straight, Fine said. He said Jean didn't present a threat. He was eating ice cream and that it was still frozen when police showed up. So if you are sitting eating ice cream, you get shot in the heart. Is that what we are saying? Fine, that's his last name. Fine said that the defense was misusing the Castro doctrine, which we'll get in a little bit deeper. He said the Castro doctrine was meant for people like Jean, an innocent person, and not the aggressor. The law is not in place for her. It is in place for Bo, Fine said. Prosecutor Jason Hermes, who Slay, I had to give it to, little fat white boy Slay, told the jurors they get to write the last chapter in this story. He said the juror could restore justice to this situation. Hermes held up a picture of Jean and the jurors, told them there were many clues Guyger missed on her way to his fourth floor apartment. And this is the one that just couldn't be overcome. He said, while holding up Jean's red floor mat, there was no other floor mat like this in the entire building. Hermes told jurors justice needs to happen in the courtroom. By your verdict, you can also tell her you will be held responsible for what you did, and whether or not you want to accept responsibility, it's going to be forced upon you. And by God, in Dallas County, Texas, there will be a consequence for you walking in and shooting an unarmed, defenseless black man. I'm going to add my part, he told jury. Now, I'm not going to read all of this because I ain't interested in that sorry ass defense team that she got here. So we're going to, on this one, watch 2 videos.
Closing arguments from Amber Guyger's attorneys and prosecutors focused on what should be considered reasonable or unreasonable. Hello, everybody. I'm Heather Hayes.
And I'm Steve Guyger. It's 9 o'clock. Prosecutors described the wrong apartment shooting death of Botham Jean as an intentional act, which amounts to murder, because they argued Guyger ignored other, more reasonable options. Her attorneys say she reacted based on her police training and that she was acting in self-defense under the facts as she believed them.
And the judge overruled prosecutors who tried to prevent the jury from being able to consider self-defense. The judge also introduced manslaughter as an option for the jury. Fox 4's Allison Harris is live tonight at the Crowley Courthouse with more. Allison.
Steve and Heather, jurors deliberated for a couple hours today after receiving the case this afternoon. The judge's instructions include that they can consider mistake of fact and the Castle doctrine. They will weigh those things from the judge very heavily. A legal expert says that those considerations weigh heavily in their deliberations. They will also consider the closing arguments from both sides.
A guilty verdict in this case does not mean you hate police. This has got nothing to do with politics. This has to do with that defendant making unreasonable decisions that put her in that seat and Bo in the ground.
Prosecutors argued in closing arguments that Amber Guyger, a former Dallas police officer with special training, must be held accountable.
This is a trained professional. Think for 1 second. Use your brain.
But her defense argued in closing that she made mistakes, none of which were intentional. Mistakes that others have given sworn testimony that they too have made, parking on the wrong floor and going to the wrong apartment.
That's 92 people said they'd done the same thing Amber Guyger had done. So when you're considering whether it's a reasonable mistake, consider that.
The judge instructed jurors that they can consider mistake of fact and the Castle doctrine, or stand your ground law, from her perspective. And the judge gave jurors the option of considering the lesser charge of manslaughter. Attorney George Milner is not associated with the case.
All the facts and circumstances are viewed from the point of view of the person on trial. Judging from her perspective, she is in her own home. There is an intruder there at night. She is by herself.
It protects homeowners against intruders, and now all of a sudden the intruder is trying to use it against the homeowner.
Everything that they have done has been to try to distract you and trick you from looking at the law in this case, because they know that if you apply it correctly, that Amber Guyger is not guilty.
The defense argued that the state did not make its case.
If you find the state has failed to prove that she was unreasonable, if you find the state has failed to prove that she was unreasonable in her belief that Mr. John was in her apartment and that he was an intruder, you must find Amber Guyger not guilty.
The state maintains she should be convicted of murder, and that's the only just outcome.
This is not one of those things where you could just say, whoops, too bad for you, buddy, you're buried 6 feet under, I'm going on about my life. Killing this man was unnecessary and it was unreasonable.
Murder carries a sentence of 5 to 99 years. Manslaughter carries a sentence of 2 to 20. They could also find her not guilty. Today, Dallas faith leaders called for people to react in peace and to be like Bo, who was a man of peace.
All right, my royal family, as we continue on,
The jury in the Amber Guyger murder trial began deliberations after receiving the case this afternoon. Good evening, I'm Steve Eagle.
And I'm Heather Hayes. Jurors have three options. They can convict Guyger of murder or a lesser charge of manslaughter, or they can find her not guilty of any crime.
In closing arguments today, prosecutors said Guyger intended to kill her upstairs neighbor, Botham Jean, and never considered more reasonable options. Her attorneys, the defense, argued that she was acting in self-defense based on the facts as she believed them to be at the time. Fox 4's Sean Rabb has the closing arguments from both sides from the courthouse tonight. Sean.
Yeah, Steve, Heather, the defense attorneys also told these jurors, listen, we know it's a lot of public pressure, a lot of scrutiny on this case, but that the law is on the side of Amber Guyger. If you follow the law, she's not guilty. Prosecutors told this jury that there has been injustice prevailing in Dallas for over a year, but that you today can restore justice.
This is about a reasonable person under the same circumstances. That is what you have to decide.
An emotional appeal to jurors from prosecutor Jason Fine, who told them they were the voice of the community and that Amber Guyger's actions were unreasonable September 6 last year when she shot and killed Botham Jean.
A guilty verdict is not saying you don't like police. This has nothing to do with that. This has to do with that defendant making unreasonable decisions that put her in that seat and Bo in the ground. That's what this case is about.
You have to view it from all the facts surrounding the case and under her circumstances, from her viewpoint.
Toby Shook, one of Guyger's attorneys, asked jurors to remove the emotion prosecutors are trying to interject, reminding them Amber Guyger had a right under Texas law to self-defense.
The state of Texas must prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt the defendant wasn't acting in self-defense. And if they can't do that, it's not guilty. Same thing on mistake of fact. If they can't prove the defendant wasn't operating on a mistake of fact beyond a reasonable doubt, the instructions are clear, it's a not guilty. That is the law.
Lead defense attorney Robert Rogers told jurors prosecutors did not make their case against Guyger.
The state has failed to do their duty. We actually, even though we have no duty, we showed you how this was a reasonable mistake. The state, what did they bring you? Sexting and speculation.
now I gotta stop here, my royal family. I know some of this overlap, but it's a reason why I do what I do. Now, what they are banking on, my royal family, is the same old tired shit. The big black man, the boogeyman. You know, they've been using that for centuries. And did you catch what he said? See, if I was sitting on that jury, I'd be listening real close. He said that they don't really need to be there. That's pretty much what he said. Like, we don't even need to be here. Like, this is a waste of their time. See, that is the enemy's arrogance. And that is why Amber Guyger's defense team is stumbling around, because they had it in their head how they always do. And I've been preaching that for the longest. They wanted an all-white jury and a white judge, which they would not have got. They probably would have got the all-white jury, but the same judge would have been on it. So there's things and lugs that the enemy throws out to invoke continuous fear about our kings.
Everything that they have done has been to try to distract you and trick you from looking at the law in this case.
Because of what she did, this is all I can bring in.
Lead prosecutor Jason Hermas holding up a picture of Botham Jean to jurors, telling them there were many clues Amber Guyger missed on her way to his fourth-floor apartment.
And this is the one that just can't be overcome. There was no other floor mat like this in the entire building.
Adding, justice needs to happen in this courtroom today.
By your verdict, you can also tell her you will be held responsible for what you did. And whether or not you want to accept responsibility, it's going to be forced upon you. And by God, in Dallas County, Texas, there will be a consequence for you walking in and shooting an unarmed, defenseless man.
And Jason Herman said Botham Jean proved no threat at all to Amber Guyger, and that they proved every element of murder. Again, the defense told this jury this was simply a tragic mistake, saying the law allows for mistakes. Heather?
Yeah, and Sean, the judge then allowed the jury to consider the defense that Guyger made this mistake of fact, meaning she believed something to be true, but it wasn't. So talk about the significance that that could then have on the jury's decision.
So in the charge to the jury that both sides had to agree on before it was read to them, 13-page document, there were strong objections from the state over including in the jury charge what is known as the mistake of fact. And it was attorney Doug Gladden who argued for the state. He really objected to this because he says, in essence, what it says is if you find the actions of Amber Guyger reasonable in going to the wrong apartment, then you must acquit. He says this allows for no culpability, for her to have no accountability for intentionally killing an innocent man. And they wanted the judge to strike that from the jury charge. Judge Tammy Kemp left it in, saying that she was going to leave it up to the triers of fact to determine whether Amber Guyger's actions were reasonable the night of September 6, 2018, when she in fact did go to the wrong floor, wrong door, shooting and killing Botham Jean.
Okay, my royal family. Now, I will put that there for y'all to, I'll put the link in so you can read at your own leisure. And now we're going to go over here to News 1. Amber Guyger's defense allowed to use the Castle, they said doctrine, Castle law, even though she wasn't in her own home. Castle law is considered to stand your ground and allow you to protect yourself in your own home. Now, a lot of people been back and forth on that, mostly pissed about it. And then somebody even threw out, because I've been reading many comments on different channels, that maybe the judge allowed that doctrine to be put there, or unquote law, that Botham had the reasonable right to defend himself in his own home. And let's not lose sight that Amber is a seasoned police officer. She has shot someone before, and she's on an elite force. So they said her ability to observe was the norm, was higher than the norm. So closing arguments are today for Amber Guyger's murder trial. There is a new development. Judge Tammy Kemp has ruled that the defense can use castle law, which allow people to protect themselves in their own home. But Guyger clearly wasn't in her own home when she killed Botham on September 6, 2018, while eating ice cream and watching television in his living room. So let's see what we got here. So CBS reports during a session outside of the presence of the jury, defense attorneys, prosecutors argued over the language of the instructions the judge would provide to the jury. It was during this session that Judge Tammy Kemp ruled the jury could consider the Castle doctrine during deliberations. Castle law is similar to stand your ground, allows a person to use or use force, even deadly force, in the protection of a home, vehicle, or other property if someone attempts to forcibly enter or remove an individual from the premises, according to CBS. Judge Kemp also ruled jurors may consider manslaughter when sentencing Guyger. Last week, Guyger said in a traumatic testimony, okay, I'm done with that. Now, I was surprised, I'm going to have to admit, I was surprised that not necessarily the casual doctrine, but I was surprised about the manslaughter because she had already admit that what her intentions was. She intended to kill him, and she said she shot center mass. So her training kicks in when she kills him, but none of her training kicks in when she unquote mistaken where her location was or who she assumed it was her in her apartment, and her senses didn't kick in. I don't believe her. I really don't. So as we continue on, this is just a minute video, but I want y'all to hear it.
Consider the Castle Doctrine in the case of former Dallas police officer Amber Guyger. The judge overruled prosecutors' request to deny the Castle Doctrine. Here is part of their argument in court today.
Now, for Castle Doctrine, the facts that give rise to the presumption are the three parts that one, the defendant has to know or have reason to believe either the victim had unlawfully and with force entered the actor's occupied habitation, knew or had reason to believe that the victim was attempting to remove unlawfully and with force the actor from the actor's habitation, or knew or had reason to believe that the victim was committing or attempting to commit a violent felony. 2, the defendant did not provoke the victim. And 3, the defendant was not otherwise engaged in criminal activity.
Guyger is accused of killing Botham Jean in his own apartment. She claims she thought she was walking into her apartment when she saw him and shot. The Castle Doctrine relates to a person's right to use deadly force to protect their home from intruders without obligation to retreat. Considering it was not Guyger's apartment was the major part of the argument for prosecutors. Closing arguments are now underway in the trial. We will continue to update you on cbsdfw.com. Katie Johnson.
Okay, my royal family. So, even though I'm a day late, and I appreciate y'all patience, what do y'all think, my royal family? Do you feel that the judge was fair in considering many different things that the jury can use? Do you think that she was fair even putting in manslaughter in the Castle Doctrine? I want to hear how people feel about the jury. I want to hear how people feel about the prosecuting team and anything else that cross your mind that I may or we have made, because we're all in this together, giving our opinions. So that is it, my royal family. Render your voice with your beautiful divine words. And as always, my royal family, I thank you for your love. I thank you for your support. And with that said, Ashe.